Shalom, everybody. Good morning. I don't need to tell you this, but I will anyways. Life doesn't always work out the way we want it to. Life doesn't always have a happy ending. So just be kind. Just be caring. Just be a little compassionate. Make this world a little bit better. I'm going to ask Cantor May to come forward and teach us this beautiful song, Olam Chesed Yibaneh. The words are very simple, and that is, God help us build this world with love.
Okay, so if you don't know this song, it's pretty simple. So the melody goes, I, da, 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 da. Let's all try that together. I, da, 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 da. And the second part, it goes up a little higher. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Let's try that part. Da, 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 da. And we add in the words Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Da 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 da. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Da 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 da. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Da da da.
Such a beautiful song. The words, of course, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, come from Psalms and is set to beautiful music by Rabbi Menachem Creditor, that I believe wrote that tune. It's such a beautiful melody and such a simple lesson. It's one that I have gone back to time and time again over this pandemic. But I have to tell you, there's one image or series of images that have remained burned into my consciousness over the course of this pandemic. It's the image of a grandparent sitting by a window, being able to communicate with their grandchild through that distance. But if there's one image that's even more racking of my soul, it's that of the person who is lying alone in their deathbed, unable to be surrounded by the people whom they love and who love them. I've often taught that there are only two things that a person fears when they come to the end of their life, whenever that happens to be. One is fear of pain, the other is fear of isolation. And for decades I have mentioned that our science has advanced so greatly that we can assure a person that they're not in pain at the end of their days. And that our obligation as fellow human beings, as loved ones, is to make sure that we care for the person in their last hours so they never feel alone. And yet, we're unable to do that now. So many people die alone, though they're cared for by loving and compassionate, caring medical personnel who are extraordinary, who are carrying so much of this burden on their shoulders. To the patient, they still are probably strangers. So how many people in the last year or so have died alone? Probably near 270,000. This pandemic, regardless of who you listen to, regardless of your politics, came on very suddenly. It came out of left field. One day we were having services here with a room full of congregants, and then the building became dark. Every corner of this building, the chapel has turned into a storage room for ritual objects. The classrooms, they're clean and await life. The hallways are silent. And so many of the beds and chairs in our homes are empty. I focused this morning on the speed with which this pandemic overtook us because it didn't permit so many the important conversations we always believed that at some point in the future we're going to have. The way our ancestors called their offspring to their bedsides to offer them some deathbed wisdom and confession. For so many, there wasn't the luxury of living wills and moments of insights, leaving so many questions unanswered, so many stories untold, so many gestures left unoffered. The Torah, time and time again, brings us these words, Vayikrevu Yemei Lamut. It came time for so-and-so to die. We have it with almost every one of our ancestors. It is a time they gather their people, their children, their clans, their tribes to their bedside to offer them maybe a blessing, to offer some wisdom, to delineate who's going to receive different parts of their inheritance. It's all so nice and neat. It's exactly what we have at the end of this week's Torah reading. Vayehu Yemei Yitzchak me'at shana u'shmonim shana. That Isaac was 180 years old when he breathed his last breath and he died. He made it to a ripe old age. Vayikberu et Esav Yaakov banav, and Esav and Jacob buried him, just as the natural order of things seemed to be. Perfect life cycle. Parents get old. They pass away after a long and productive life. They realize they have been granted a gift, and they share those gifts with their children as they're about to pass. The children gather for the burial and they carry on. All the while, they hear the words of wisdom that their parents offered them before they took their leave. And while many of us here in this room and watching at home can relate, I'm sure that an equal number of people who are listening, it didn't work out that way at all. That's why the rest of the Torah reading this morning is so important. So let me say this very simply. Closure in life is a luxury. It has ancient roots in the Torah, but it's a luxury. It's one that not everybody has the privilege to experience. If there's nothing else that you remember from this morning's talk, just remember that closure is a luxury. Closure is the way of the few privileged. And we don't need to be reminded of the cruelty of life or how difficult it can be. We don't need stories like the rape of Dinah found in this week's Torah Parsha that I've never referenced before in a sermon to remind us of the cruelty, the disastrous way we treat each other. Life is messy and it's complicated. It's filled with inexplicable moments and deep hurt and pain, like the moment of the ravage of Dinah. He laid with her by force, the text says. We are so cruel. People cheat and people lie and people do terrible things to one another. And sometimes there's never getting over it. And sometimes nature does worse. Pandemics steal friends and families. Floods destroy homes and lives. Fires consume property and people. Cancer kills. Yet there's something indomitable about the human spirit that continues to look for the happy ending, the closure, the reconciliation, the cure, the kindness. Every day I get an email briefing from our governor. Governor Cuomo updates us on the state of COVID infections in our area. While they're rising right now and growing ever more bleak are our hopes. The email always ends with deep breath moment. It's supposed to leave us with some sense of hope. Someone who sets out to raise $1,500 and instead raises $39 million. And our faith is restored in God's plan, God's goodness manifested in humanity. And that's exactly what this morning's parsha does. After decades of separation, Jacob and Esau are reunited. After decades of being separated because of a stealing of a birthright. Doesn't matter, says the story. They still run and greet each other. Vayaratz Esav likrato v'yichabkehu. Esau ran into Jacob's arm and they embraced as if the conflict never happened. It's a beautiful, happy ending. They share a meal and they go their separate ways. There are no grudges. Jacob says, take these presents from me. Esau says, no, I don't need anything. I've got everything I need. Jacob says, please do me that favor. Esau says, okay. It's a nice story. But life goes on. They go their different ways. It was a completely successful summit. Everyone got what they wanted. Peace between brothers. Internal peace for Jacob after countless thrashing evenings of nightmares. Tranquility, harmony, blissful living, says the Torah, is possible. Jacob goes on to continue making a life for himself, having children, finding the balance of work and family. And we see a moment of turmoil. We see that there are those points in life where we're pitched a curveball. We know this story of Rachel. When her labor was hardest, says the text, the midwife said to her, have no fear. You're in labor. You're going to have a child. But she breathed her last breath, for she was dying, and she named him Ben-Oni, Benjamin. His father called him Benjamin. She died in childbirth. An incredible curveball. No one could have seen it coming. And she names her child the child of my suffering. And it's Rashi who says Ben-Oni means Ben Sa'ari. My child is a child of pain and suffering. Every time Jacob is going to look at this child, he's going to see his mother in him. And every time he calls him in for dinner, he's going to remember the moment of Ben-Oni, what it means to be a child born of suffering. Like Isaac, who was named for that difficult moment of laughter that was painful for Abraham Every time Jacob says the words Benjamin, he remembers the trade of child for mother, of baby coming in as loving wife goes out. Truth is, that's how we often look at life. We think of life as trade-offs, right? Some good, some bad. We say to ourselves in those tragic moments, wasn't it great that we had them for as long as we did? Truthfully, in that moment, it doesn't make us feel much better. Hopefully, over the long term, it will. But in that moment, we don't believe in trade-offs. We don't believe in one for another. I've spoken so many times from this bima about banking the joy. The incredible need that we have as human beings to take those celebratory moments and bank them so that we have them later when we need to draw on them, when we need to make a withdrawal because life is so hard. We can recall those moments of joy. And maybe after the moment of impact is over, we'll get that perspective. And hopefully those moments will not define us, but how we react to those moments will be the definition of who we are. And so I looked deeper into this story. And again, I turned to my favorite friend, Rabbi VaYishlach of Berdichev, one of the great Hasidic masters, and he said, Be'emet shezot habchina lo nishalem. Truth is, in life, it doesn't always get made up. There isn't always a make-up call in real life. It doesn't always come back to benefit us in the end. It's like a dad who misses a performance or a sporting event and then says to the child, let's go out for ice cream, I'll make it up to you. It may work for the 10-year-old, it doesn't work when we're adults. So Rabbi VaYishlach of Berdichev teaches, "Ulashpia aleinu mitovo v'chasdo kedei sheyitra'eh chasdo liba'e olam." So our job is very simple, to be as kind and compassionate and see the goodness wherever we can, because otherwise the darkness can overwhelm us. Maybe we can see the good and the kindness in the world, maybe not. But no matter. Zeh she'amar, just as it says in Tehillim, Olam chesed yibaneh, we have to continuously do the work of making this world a better place. You have to do your part. To which I only add one little piece of insight. Don't keep score. Don't keep score. It will overwhelm you. In this long debate about how we're going to spend the holidays, or better, with whom are we going to spend the upcoming holidays, there have been people who have traveled to be with family. In my family, I have been against it because I've always said, to paraphrase the Talmud, it's better to give up one Thanksgiving so that you can have many in the future. And while the logic seems obvious to me, and therefore Sharon and I stayed home, we were appropriately sad, missing family. But logic prevailed for us. Yet there was one thing that one pundit said that I thought at the time was hyperbolic, but now I understand better. He said, what about the people for whom this is their last holiday? Look, there's no way to know. When our time has come to an end, we won't know, probably. We don't get an expiration date on our birth certificate. It's clear that with some of our relatives, because of their age, or because of their health, or because of their isolation, we see their decline. And it's possible this may be their last. And while I pray it's not that way, I've experienced too much of life to think otherwise. Because life is messy. Life doesn't always work out the way we want it to. Life doesn't always have a happy ending. So, just be kind. Just be caring. And make this world a little bit more compassionate. And so again, I invite Cantor May forward to sing those words that we learned earlier. Olam chesed yibaneh. Build this world with love. Build this world with kindness.
Olam chesed yibaneh, da 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 da. Olam chesed yibaneh, da 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 da. Olam chesed yibaneh. Chesed yibaneh, da 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 da.
Please rise for the Chatzi Kaddish, page 184.
Yitkadal, yitkadash.